Hi everyone, it's Sinead. I am standing on the Strand. We're going to take you on a rather unique journey through the back streets of Fleet Street and the Strand. And some of the bits that you haven't seen before. Sinead here. I just wanted to bring you over here to see one of my favourite statues in London. And this commemorates the incredible writer Oscar Wilde, known for his witticisms. I love the fact that Maggie Hamlin is the lady who erected the statue in 1998. And it kind of depicts Oscar Wilde rising from a sarcophagus, as you can see here, and smoking a cigarette. She had a bit of trouble with this actually, because people kept stealing the cigarette until the council replaced it. But this was opened by Stephen Fry, who famously played Oscar Wilde in 1997, the movie Wilde. But this beautiful little statue, a dedication. Make sure you come and sit down and have a chat with Oscar Wilde, ladies and gents. One of my favourites in London. It's actually made of green granite and bronze. And you'll just see here an inscription from one of his more famous plays. We are all, from Lady Windermere's fan, we are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. So you can pay your respects to Oscar Wilde. Now we're going to head across the road, and I wanted to show you the beautiful Charing Cross station. Now, Charing was the former name of a village in the area, and the cross commemorates what you're looking at, where the name comes from. This replica of what would have been the Eleanors Cross. Now, this stunning, kind of overlooked monument in London commemorates 12 resting places, or 12 crosses that were erected for the funeral procession of Eleanor of Castile. And she was a wife of King Edward I. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, people tend to miss this quite a bit because people are always rushing. I have nearly got knocked down here like 400 times I'm trying to film this. So her funeral procession came from Lincoln and it was heading to Westminster Abbey. So 12 of these crosses were erected on the procession route. So this is not the original, however. As I said, the original was a timber one that would have been situated where the Charles I statue is now in Trafalgar Square. The original cross would have been demolished in 1647 under the orders of Parliament. This replica was built in 1865 and is the work of the architect E.M. Barry. This one is a bit more ornate than the original, however, and definitely believe it deserves a bit more attention than it usually garners in this area. Now we're heading down this beautiful street. This is Craven Street, and it has some of the most, in my opinion, beautiful 19th century townhouses in London. Now at this particular address, you have a rather bizarre museum. This is the famous Optical Museum, and it's the British Optical Association Museum. Now you do need to ring them in advance. It's got spectacles belonging to Dr. Crippen and Benjamin Franklin himself, and I believe it has a lot of really bizarre exhibits inside there. Being a drawer full of diseased and deformed eyes, so some more obscure museums if you're interested in visiting. But up here as well, we also have the former home of Benjamin Franklin, which will be of massive interest to our Americans. Benjamin Franklin's house is basically dedicated to the American, statesman. He was a scientist, a printer, and inventor. Now, Franklin lived here from the period of, I believe it was around 1775. He left here at 1775 actually, but from 1757 to 1775. So technically, because he lived here and he had diplomatic immunity, this is a rather bizarre statistic. It was kind of a de facto embassy as such, foreign embassy. But as the American War of Independence reached its conclusion, Franklin then returned to America, and he was also responsible for helping draft the American Declaration of Independence. I believe he was also a signatory on that. So definitely, folks, the only dedication to Benjamin Franklin and his time here in London is right down here on Craven Street. If any of you'd like to visit, you can book your tickets. So we'll take a quick detour in here and I'll tell you a little bit more about the York Watergate, just here on the right hand side. Now the reason for its rather curious location, it seems to be quite isolated here in the middle of the park, but we're actually standing, and this is located exactly where the river used to meet its bank. And this area of course was embanked by the genius that was Joseph Bazalgette after the Great Stink of London in 1858. So the Watergate is actually all that remains of York House, built as a London base for the bishops of Norwich, probably in around 1230. But it's a reminder of a time here in the Strand, and all along where I'm going to be showing you today, where so many mansions lined the Strand and backed onto the River Thames. So in the 16th century, York House was acquired by Henry VIII, and it took on its name when it was given to the Bishop of York in 1586. Later it was owned by the racy royal favourite, the Duke of Buckingham, George Villiers. So that Watergate was built around 1625 to actually provide a place for the Duke to alight from his boat, but now it actually sits 150 yards back from the river. But at one time the river would have come straight up to this gate and he could have alighted his boat much more conveniently. I'm just coming out here, I'm going to take you up these little steps and we'll go around the back streets here of Buckingham Street. Amazing to think that we're actually standing on inside the former wealth, the area where we are now is where York Mansion would have been. But here we have, as we're coming up Buckingham Street, a dedication to Samuel Pepys, the famous British diarist. And he is the man, the very reason we know so much about the Great Fire of London to this day, because of his diaries of the Great Fire of London. He actually lived at 2 addresses on this house. Now, this was a residence of Samuel Pepys. It said he lived here then, 1679 to 1688. Look at these beautiful homes. I enjoyed that, you guys, but as you can see now, we're going to continue on. We're standing at the back here of Villiers Street. We're on John Adams Street. And John Adams Street is to commemorate one of the famous Adams brothers, and they were John Robert James and William Adam, who were actually responsible for designing some of the most beautiful and finest London buildings in the 18th century. We can see why they're so fondly remembered in just a moment. You see this elegant house I'm walking towards at the very end. Much better view of it, but this is number 7. Adams Street, and it's kind of a striking example of what would have been known as the Adelphi development that was built at a huge cost by the brothers here on the former site of what was known as Durham House. Now, the Adelphi development was essentially 24 neoclassical terraced houses that were built for the gentry in this area, furnished to the highest standards at the time, and they were built between 1768 and 1772. But sadly, there was a huge decline in the Adelphi over the following centuries. Its terraces and its dark vaults kind of became, overlooking the river, became a haunt for vagabonds and prostitutes in the area. But the bulk of the 18th century Adelphi complex was demolished in the 1930s to be replaced by what is now known as the New Adelphi complex, and I'm going to show you that there. But the former Adelphi terrace attracted very wealthy people, so this was the newer Adelphi terrace and complex that was built on the former site. So we're going to take a left here and onto Carting Lane, and I just wanted to show you this amazing example of a patent sewer ventilating lamp that dates all the way back to the 1880s. Now, this lamp would have been quite common around London. And the interesting thing about it, there were hundreds of these lampposts everywhere. And they lit up central London, but they were all supplied with methane gas being emitted from the sewers below. So one of the very few remaining. It's a beautiful example of Victorian lighting, 1880s. Isn't that wonderful? Now, we're going to head up here, though. We're going to take a little detour down the back of the Savoy Hotel. And we're still parallel now to the Strand, and we will rejoin the Strand shortly. But I wanted to bring you to the only remains of a pre-reformation building here in this part of London. And it's coming up down here on the left-hand side. And it's the Queen's Chapel of the Savoy, situated here in what would have been formerly another amazing palace on the site, known as Savoy Palace, the Savoy House. Let me show you this beautiful chapel you wouldn't even know existed. Now this is, at the moment, it is open for Christian worship. But in this tiny little back street, you have the stunning chapel, which actually predates, well, the original chapel on the site predates the Reformation. And it is the only remainder of the great Savoy Palace, which was built by Peter, Count of Savoy. He was an uncle of the Queen Consort Eleanor of Provence on land here given to him by Henry III in 1246. It was later owned then by the hugely wealthy John Gaunt of Gaunt, son of Edward III, whose unpopularity actually with the mob ensured that the palace that was on this site was destroyed during the Peasants' Revolt in 1381. But Henry VII later founded the Hospital of St. John of the Savoy on the site, with the chapel being built as part of the development in around 1505. Now, the hospital remained in use until 1702, after which the buildings were largely abandoned and finally demolished in the 19th century. However, the chapel survived, and despite substantial restoration in the 1860s, again remains the only pre-Reformation building in this part of London, and it is now home to the Royal Victorian Order, an order of chivalry, and it is also officially a private chapel of the monarch, now known as the King's Chapel, of course, of the Savoy. Not so much the Queen's anymore, so they had to change that name. I'd say it's absolutely amazing what you find when you take a little stroll around the back streets in London. There's something everywhere you look. There's history on every corner, and a reminder of the past and the thousands of years of history of this country and the city itself. Here's the graveyard attached to it. And we're going to bring us back out onto the Strand, you guys. So if you are enjoying the tour so far, go ahead and click that like and share button and help others discover this video. And for more virtual tours of London and beyond, consider subscribing to our channel. Be sure to visit our website to learn more about our in-person tours and London travel tips. We also offer live and virtual tours in cities throughout the world. You can help support this channel by donating through the thanks button or by buying your tour guide a pint or a cup of coffee. Links to do so are in the description below. Now back to the tour. Now, some of the more famous pubs in this area as well. There's one in particular, the Lyceum Tavern. And that was a famous haunt of Bram Stoker, who for a period of time actually managed the Savoy Theatre, which is right next door. The Lyceum Theatre, sorry, excuse me. This to give you an idea of what the old tavern would have looked like, and home to many famous patrons over the years, including, of course, Bram Stoker. Look how wonderful and old school it is. Another Sam Smith's pub here in London and at the area of Aldwych. They have some beautiful little booths that you can eat and drink in. But it brings you back to a different world, doesn't it? Isn't it remarkable in here? I love this place. Quick look upstairs. Look at this. We feature so many pubs on our tours. But I mean, if you want 18th and 19th century pubs, I think we should do a tour of them actually, some of the oldest pubs in London. Look at this. Isn't it wonderful? Love it. Now this is Drury Lane, and at the end, that's if you take a little stroll up here, you come up towards the area known as Fitzrovia, and you can check out my video on Fitzrovia. There's the BT Tower in the background. And Tina's still here actually. That show is supposed to be epic, by the way, folks. Now this is Bush House. This would have been the former residence of the BBC at one time in London. But I want to take you out into one of the most beautiful 19th century buildings in London. Let's go and have a look at Somerset House. But I do want to take you inside the courtyard of this magnificent building. This is Somerset House. And now it's more associated with ice skating at lunch and at Christmas time. And they have a beautiful outdoor cinema here in the summertime. Also has concerts. But at the time that this was reconstructed, when it was formerly Somerset House, as I said, Oliver Cromwell would have been laid in state here before his funeral. It was also where Elizabeth I had lived here when there was a palace on the site before she became Queen Elizabeth I. In more recent years, it's been used as the Inland Revenue. But it's, and of course, the most famous affair that takes place every year here is London Fashion Week. This is where all the supermodels come, and they have London Fashion Week takes place here. But look at this. Just beautiful building. I always love this. I feature this every year in my Christmas lights tour. And this is only the main courtyard. There's so much more to it, and on the other side it's on the River Thames, of course. Look at the arches. Well, that's going to take us out here towards the beautiful church, St. Mary-le-Strand. And we're going to head inside and see what this light exhibit is all about in there. I'm just turning right here. You'll see it's in the centre of the road, which normally would have been a public thoroughfare. But look how pretty it is there, right in the centre of the road with the blossoms outside the front. And this newest pedestrian area, where you can come and chill and take a break from your long walk today. St. Mary-le-Strand. Now here on the right-hand side is one of the more prestigious colleges in London, and this is King's College. And this was founded by George the, I think it was George the Fourth, maybe. Yeah, it was George the Fourth, actually, and the Duke of Wellington in 1829. I don't know if this car is allowed to come down here. This is pedestrianised, but maybe Uber hasn't quite updated its routes. I think that happens sometimes as well. So you'll see all the students hanging out here. It's a huge campus. And we also have across the road the London School of Economics and Political Science. Now this is quite intriguing. So this is one of a former abandoned tube stations in London. There's quite a few of them around London. It's very hard to get inside them. I would love to get inside and do a video of the old abandoned underground tunnels and tubes here in London. But Aldwych Underground Station is what it was originally known as. It was formerly part of the Piccadilly line. Now it closed in 1994, but it originally opened as Strand Station in 1907, and that's why you have the name there, the Strand Station. It was renamed Aldwych in 1917. But it was one of those that was used as a bomb shelter during World War II and a public air raid shelter. And it also housed, would you believe, at one time, the Elgin marbles and other treasures which were stored here to protect them during the Blitz and the bombing campaign of World War II. Now, the station inside apparently still has some of its original features, but it's been featured in so many different movies, like Atonement, Superman 4, I think, Patriot Games, The Craze, and Atonement. Now, we're going to keep walking down here and we're going to head down Surrey Street, because a part of the building that you see down here as well, all still part of King's College, has some history with the hugely scandalous Profumo affair that took place. But the amazing building and the signage we're looking at right now is Norfolk House. And this was the former Norfolk Hotel. It's still part of King's College. And this is one of the meeting places used by politician John Profumo and call girl Christine Keeler in 1961 during their affair. And that caused such a scandal at the time. It brought down the Macmillan government. Now, there's also a very curious building here beside it here. It's Roman baths, former Roman baths, situated in here. And if we have a little look, the National Trust Roman bath steps down the right. And if we look through the gate here, we just see some of the remnants of where the baths used to be. Just down here at the very end, if we can. I can't really make it out there very well for you guys. And that's through there, the former Roman baths in this area. And we're gonna head down here, and there's one other little curious building I want to show you up a side street. Guys, we're taking some bookings and they are going fast and rapidly. We're heading into our summer season, which is going to bring us into a very busy time of the year again. So if you'd like to book me with a private tour, we have our private tour link at the bottom of this video. And just contact Margaret at Free Tours by Foot. Now I want to show you this rather curious building just down the end of the street, right up at the top. You see this white building down the end. This was actually a watchtower, or what they call a watch house. But this 19th century building you'll see at the end is rather curiously was used as a watch house, because on the site of where we are at King's College there's a former graveyard, and this watch house was used to try and spot body snatchers that were stealing their bodies for anatomical research. It's situated down the very end here and part of the King's College campus now. Amazing to think there was a graveyard on the site that would have been frequented by I love how the British put an elegant twist on everything. Grave robbing and body snatching is now known as the resurrectionists. And this little house here uses the 19th century watch house for body snatchers. And you can head up here on top of Temple Station. Look how pretty it is up here. If there's ever any parades or anything you'd like to see here on the Embankment taking place, this is a great little viewing spot of the Victoria Embankment. This will give you a bird's eye view of the London Marathon or anything taking place. So right down here, and this will be the final stop on the tour, our little walking trip today. Thank you as always for joining me, my lovelies. Always a pleasure. And I will see you very soon. So Sinead signing out here in London on a beautiful spring day, albeit a little bit dull, but beautiful in London translates to no rain. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, ladies and gents. It really does help me and the rest of the team. The more activity we have on the channel, the more beneficial it is for us. So a thumbs up, a like, a comment, anything helps along the way. And just to show you where we always meet for our City of London tour, here we are at Temple Underground Station. And that is our meeting point, right out here. So thanks guys, Sinead here, signing out from Temple Station in London. Thank you as always for joining me.